Do you see that?
I do.
And when you reviewed that, you said it refreshed your recollection, right?
Yes.
And that's when you said the video showed Vang's hand on the child's shoulder squeezing and the child was wincing, right?
Yes.
And you would agree that there is nothing in that paragraph about the child wincing, correct?
There's nothing in that paragraph. Correct.
There's nothing in that paragraph about Vang's hand being on his shoulder or neck area, right?
The paragraph says, the video shows Vang's hand on victim child one's neck and shoulder.
Okay, then I'll rephrase the question. There's nothing on there about the hand squeezing the neck.
This paragraph is referring to a summary of all the text messages.
Okay, but you said it refreshed your recollection about seeing that in the video, right?
Yes.
So my question is, if it's not in the criminal complaint that you reviewed, where did you get the information that the child was wincing and the hand was squeezing?
I recall that video.
Okay. You testified that you did this investigation into the whereabouts of Katrina Bauer and Jesse Vang on February 16th, right?
Yes.
And you reviewed a video from Saucy's Bar and another video from Quick Trip, right?
I didn't review a video from Saucy's Bar. I reviewed a video from Quick Trip.
And you testified that the child was not in the video, right?
I did not see the child in the video at Quick Trip.
And then you said you could not locate anyone who was a babysitter for the child, right?
Correct.
What efforts did you make to locate the babysitter?
At the time of the initial investigation, we did neighborhood canvases of all the apartment complex members. We talked to family members. We reached out to people in both individuals' phones of who they would have contact or communication with. We made contact with Katrina's neighbors in Wisconsin Dells, several different people, if and when the last time they would have seen or had any type of contact with victim child one.
So this was just a general canvass looking for witnesses, right?
Well, part of that canvas on multiple occasions is when was the last time that these people would have seen victim child one?
But you didn't specifically ask, did you babysit for the child, did you?
I didn't ask.
Did anybody ask?
I believe there were some people that did ask. Yes, because we did make contact with victim child one's babysitters in Wisconsin Dells.
Okay. Well, you wouldn't expect a babysitter from Wisconsin Dells to come to Two Rivers to watch the child, would you?
I don't think that's likely.
Okay. Now, it was your testimony that this Dr. Petska diagnosed the child with psychological maltreatment, right?
I believe that was a part of her diagnosis.
Has Dr. Petska ever seen the child?
I believe Dr. Pesca has not seen the child in person.
Okay. So do you know how she could diagnose psychological maltreatment without seeing and talking to the child?
I don't know how she bases her diagnosis on and how she accumulates her opinions.
Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you. Attorney, is there any follow-up?
Just a couple. As part of the February 16th, trying to locate anyone that had seen victim child one, there was also a canvass of the neighboring apartments, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, one of the neighbors babysat at times for another child that was in that apartment.
Yes.
Did any of those canvassing of the neighbors in Two Rivers or other individuals find anyone that was babysitting for that child, victim child one on February 16th?
No.
You were asked many questions about whether repeating phrases over and over would endanger physical health, or not seeing a mother or individual like that would cause physical damage. Correct? You were asked those questions?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know if that could cause emotional damage?
Yes, it could.
Yeah, I am going to object on the grounds that there's no foundation that this witness has the qualifications to tell us whether that could cause emotional damage.
Attorney Wbay.
I can lay some foundation. Special Agent Volan, you indicated that you have been in law enforcement over 24 years, correct?
Correct.
What types of cases have you investigated over your career?
So for 10 years, I was a school resource officer. During that time, I also investigated child abuse and neglect cases. After that, I was a detective at a sheriff's office where one of my assignments was child abuse and
On child abuse and child neglect.
yes,
As part of those trainings, do you also, are you also trained on things that can cause child abuse, as well as what can cause emotional damage to a child?
correct.
As part of not only these trainings, but do you also have you also spoken with child victims who have been abused or neglected?
Yes,
And have they conveyed to you what caused them emotional damage or physical pain?
yes,
And when you indicated that the repeated phrases or the not seeing a mother, those types of things could cause emotional damage, what are you basing that on?
I'm basing that on a professional's opinion, Dr. Petska's professional opinion.
You were also asked about the standing and praying or holding a position for a long period of time, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, what we're talking about with the standing and holding a position in this case, at times, according to Mr. Vang, was up to 2 to 3 hours, correct?
Yes,
And based upon your training and experience, could that cause physical pain?
yes,
I have nothing else at this point, thank you.
Attorney Jensen, any,
No, thank you.
will this witness be excused?
Yes, the state will be calling Special Agent Reagan.
Solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in the matter now before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, be seated. State your full name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Justin Reagan, Justen Ragen.
Special Agent Reagan, how are you currently employed?
I'm employed with the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, that's commonly referred to as DCI.
And how long have you been with DCI?
Approximately just over 4.5 years.
Prior to being employed by DCI, did you work in law enforcement?
Yes.
And who did you work for?
Previous to DCI, I worked with the Oconto County Sheriff's Office, part-time and full-time, and previous, I had worked with the Lake County Sheriff's Office. I have just over 17 and a half years in law enforcement, and just over 17 full-time.
I'm going to direct your attention to February 20th of 2024. Were you working for DCI on that date?
I was.
And were you activated regarding a missing child in Two Rivers, Wisconsin?
Yes.
And in fact, the missing child that you were activated about is victim child in this case, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to just back up for a moment. What is your specialty with DCI?
I'm a special agent and I'm assigned to the Major Crimes Unit out of the Appleton Field Office.
Do you also work cold cases?
I do.
As part of being one of the major crimes investigators, were you part of the investigative team into the whereabouts of victim child one?
Yes.
As part of that team, did you author and review multiple reports, not only from DCI, but also reviewed reports from Two Rivers Police Department and the Sheriff's Office?
I have.
And you've been part of this investigation from February 20th onward, correct?
Yes.
As part of that investigation, was law enforcement attempting to find the whereabouts of victim child one?
Yes.
And part of that investigation, do you go backwards from February 20th to try and determine the last time that victim child one had been seen?
Yes.
And was that done in this case?
Yes.
Other than statements by Mr. Vang and Katrina Bauer, were you able to find any other independent witnesses who had seen victim child one after February 16th of 2024?
No.
There was a point in time on February 16th of 2024 when he was seen by some independent witnesses, correct?
Correct.
And from that point in time, the only information that was provided to you was from Jesse Vang or Katrina Bauer, correct?
Correct.
As part of your investigation, did you also, you and other law enforcement officers review cell phone data from Mr. Vang's phone as well as associated phones with him?
Yes.
And did Mr. Vang have more than one phone?
Yes.
Can you explain how many phones were associated with Mr. Vang or his household?
2.
And were both phones his, or did one of the phones belong to somebody else?
Both phones were Jesse's, but one was also utilized by his son.
When you reviewed the data from the phone that was used by his son, were there communications on there from Mr. Vang as well?
Yes.
And in interacting with Mr. Vang and Ms. Bauer, did they admit that Mr. Vang had utilized his son's phone at times?
Yes.
When you're trying to do that backtrack as far as the investigation, do you also look at the cell phone locations, if cell phones move or don't move, and where they go?
Yes.
I'm going to go specifically to February 19th of 2024, okay? Did you and other investigators review cell phone information on whether Mr. Vang's phone or the one utilized by his son moved the evening hours of February 19th, or if they were utilized at all?
Yes.
Was there a period of time that drew your interest?
Yes.
And what was that period of time?
Between 5:59 p.m. and 7:12 p.m. on February 19th.
Why did that draw your interest?
The 2 phones showed to be within the area of the apartment complex that Mr. Vang resided at, and there appeared to be no activity from the phones.
As far as Mr. Vang's phone, could you tell if there was anything occurring on that phone?
The device showed plugged in on a charger, and also showed that there was a movie playing through Netflix.
Does it show any other manipulation of that phone or movement of that phone?
Not between that time period.
When you reviewed Mr. Vang's phone, was there a lot of activity on that phone typically on a typical day?
I was informed by the agent that reviewed the phone that there's typically a lot of activity going on the defendant's phone.
But between that 5:59 PM time frame and 7:12 on February 19th, there was just plugged in and playing a movie on Netflix, correct?
Correct.
Did you also try and determine if Mr. Vang had any vehicles?
Yes.
And did he have any vehicles that were registered to him?
Yes.
Did you also try to determine if Mr. Vang had utilized any vehicles that weren't his?
Yes.
Were you able to locate any vehicles that he utilized that did not belong to him?
Yes.
And do you know what kind of vehicle he utilized?
A 1997 Nissan Altima. That was beige or tan in color.
Do you know what day he utilized that?
February 19th, 2024.
Did that vehicle belong to an individual who lived in Two Rivers?
Yes.
And did law enforcement speak with that individual?
Yes.
Were they able to provide information on how Mr. Vang had possession of that Nissan Altima?
Yes.
What information did they provide?
Witness one indicated to the agent interviewing them that on February 18th, they had a conversation with the defendant. The defendant had been doing laundry and had asked to borrow witness one's vehicle on the 19th around 5 p.m. and indicated he needed it to provide or deliver money to another individual unknown.
Did witness one indicate if he provided the keys to Mr. Vang or if someone provided the keys to Mr. Vang?
Yes.
And do you recall when the keys were provided to Mr. Vang?
On February 19th, sometime between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m.
Was law enforcement able to view this Nissan Altima?
Yes.
And did that vehicle have any type of license plate?
Yes.
As part of your investigation, what do you do with that kind of information when you're trying to see where a vehicle goes and you have a license plate?
Well, we can index that information, and we can also do searches to see if that license plate was ran or indexed by another law enforcement officer, agency, or other type of license plate indexing software.
Can you just explain for the court what you mean by indexing?
Yes.
How does that happen?
So the license plate number would be ran through the e-time system, and then a return would come back and it would indicate the make, model of the vehicle, other descriptors, and also any owners or liens on the vehicle as well.
Was that done in this case?
Yes.
And did any information come about that search?
Indicated that it was registered to witness one.
Did any law enforcement run that plate in a time of interest?
So through a search by a criminal analyst, we were able to determine that on the 19th, that vehicle plate was indexed by a Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office deputy.
Did they give you a time approximately?
Approximately 6:46 p.m.
And are you able, excuse me, were you able to determine where that sheriff's deputy was when that plate was ran?
Yes.
And where was that deputy?
In the location of Forest Avenue, near 24th Street and 22nd.
And what municipality?
The city of Two Rivers.
As a result of that information, did you try and obtain video?
Yes,
Throughout this investigation, were you attempting to locate any video that might be relevant to the investigation?
yes,
And when you were given this specific time and location, did officers try and find any video cameras in that area?
yes,
Were you able to find any video cameras in that area?
yes,
And did any of them have any information of interest?
yes.
What area had video cameras that were of interest?
The St. Vincent de Paul store located in Row and 22nd,
That's also in Two Rivers, correct?
city of Two Rivers.
Were you able to view that video from St. Vincent de Paul?
Yes.
And what did you observe on that video?
The video shows what was believed to be at the time the Nissan traveling north on Monroe at approximately 6:47 p.m. Towards 22nd, and then continuing north. And then the St. Vincent de Paul video shows the vehicle returning at approximately between 7:05 and 7:06 p.m.
When the video, were you able to observe anything of interest?
Yes, so the vehicle returned from the north, so it was traveling south on Forest Ave, and then went east on 22nd, and then turned into the parking lot at St. Vincent de Paul. The vehicle then pulled up along, would be the west side of the building of the store. You could see the Ultima, the license plate, and then observed a male individual later identified as the defendant exit the driver's side door. At that point, the defendant then went to the rear driver's side door, opened that up, obtained a black object that appeared to be a suitcase. The defendant then walked to a side door of St. Vincent de Paul and laid that suitcase down. The defendant then seemed to take a double take at the suitcase and then returned back to the Nissan Altima, exiting the parking lot, traveling back north through the intersection.
Were you able to see the clothing the defendant was wearing at that point in time?
Yes.
Was there anything distinct about the clothing?
So he was wearing a dark colored New York Yankees ball cap with a flat brim and a sticker still on the top of the brim. He was wearing a white winter jacket style, dark clothing underneath, dark pants, and what appeared to be sandals, or referred to as slides, that seemed to be Adidas brand.
Did you observe the defendant on February 20th of 2024?
I did.
And was there anything you noticed about his clothing that day?
Clothing was very similar to what he was wearing on February 19th.
What about the hat?
It appeared to be the same.
And just for the record, the person you know as Mr. Vang, is he present in court?
Yes.
Can you describe where he's seated and what he's wearing?
He's at the defense table wearing the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office inmate clothing, seated next to his defense counsels.
Let the record reflect the identification of the defendant.
Any objection, Attorney Jensen?
No?
The record will reflect the identification of Mr. Vang.
I'm going to come back to the suitcase in a minute. You indicated you found the video from, or law enforcement found the video from St. Vincent de Paul. Did law enforcement also look at other areas for video that would depict this Nissan Altima?
Yes,
This was a 1997 Nissan Altima, correct?
correct.
Were there any distinctive damage or other items that law enforcement would look for when you're reviewing video?
There was some rust on the sides of the vehicle, and there's also distinctive turn markers that they were using to identify the vehicle.
As part of the video canvassing, were you able to locate, or strike that, was law enforcement able to locate any other video that depicted a Nissan Altima similar to this one, besides the St. Vincent de Paul video?
Yes,
I'm gonna start west of Two Rivers. Were there any locations west of Two Rivers that had video?
there was an area on Johnston Drive. Johnston.
Do you recall where that area was approximately?
It was a business approximately half a mile, 3/4 mile north of 310, Highway 310, on the east side of Johnston.
Do you recall approximately what time that the vehicle had passed that business?
Approximately 6:21 p.m.
After 6:21 p.m., was there any video that depicted the Nissan?
Yes.
And where was that?
Another location was located at a power substation that was on Highway 310, on the north side of 310 to the east of Johnston.
Do you know the approximate time for that?
Approximately 6:41 p.m.
And then after that substation, was the vehicle observed?
There was another area observed on Hawthorne Ave, which Highway 310 turns into Hawthorne Ave as it enters into the city of Two Rivers. It was at a private residence. This would have been at approximately 6:44 p.m.
And then there were the observations at St. Vincent de Paul, correct?
Correct.
Was there any other businesses in the city of Two Rivers that you were able to obtain video of this Nissan during that time period between 5:59 p.m. and 7:12 p.m.?
There was a Shell gas station that was located to the south of the apartment complex on the east side of Mishcot Road. But Monroe Ave, Forest Ave, and Mishcot are all the same road. The names change throughout the city of Two Rivers.
Do you recall if the Nissans observed going northbound or southbound or both?
At the gas station, it observed both.
I'm gonna go back to the suitcase that was dropped off at St. Vincent de Paul, okay?
Okay.
After the video was discovered at St. Vincent de Paul, did officers go back to try and locate that suitcase?
Yes.
And were any black suitcases consistent with the video located?
Yes.
And could you describe that suitcase for me?
It's a medium-sized suitcase with roller wheels on the bottom, black in color. It had a Jeep brand icon on the top part of the suitcase.
Was that suitcase inspected?
Yes.
And was it transported to the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory?
In Madison, yes.
What type of testing was it submitted for?
DNA testing.
And did the crime laboratory analyst provide you any results?
Yes.
First of all, who was the analyst, do you recall?
Erica Stocks.
And what type of information did she provide regarding DNA in the suitcase?
From the interior of the suitcase, there was a single source male profile that was developed, and it was consistent with victim child one.
And that was on the interior of the suitcase?
Yes.
Was she able to do any other testing regarding types of fluid in the suitcase?
She conducted a presumptive test for saliva,
And what was the result of that?
positive.
You continued on this investigation as part of the investigative team, correct?
Correct.
Were you contacted on September 7th, 2024?
Yes.
And where were you contacted?
I was contacted by the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Office about possible skeletal human remains located in a wooded area in Manitowoc County.
Do you recall what roadway these remains were located by?
Yes.
What roadway?
Christy Bob Lane.
And you indicated that was in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin?
Yes,
Did you go out to look at the remains?
I did.
And did you bring anyone with you?
I did.
Who did you bring?
A forensic anthropologist, Dr. Jordan Karsten, who is also a member of the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory.
And was Dr. Karsten able to give you any information on whether these were potential human remains or animal remains?
He identified the remains to be human skeletal remains and could initially observe that they appeared to be subadult.
Now, when you were contacted on September 7th, 2024, was this evening hours or late afternoon?
It was approximately between 3:15 and 3:30 p.m. And it was a Saturday, September 7th.
As a result of that, was the scene held until the next day to do a proper search?
Yes,
Law enforcement secured the scene?
yes.
And can you briefly explain how the scene was processed on September 8th?
Yes. So extra personnel from the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory responded along with other law enforcement officers. A plan was put into place in order to recover the remains under the direction of Dr. Karsten in the Wisconsin State Crime Laboratory. It's a systematic way that they recover the remains from the area, including removing the skeletal remains from the surface area, and then also conducting a very slow and methodical excavating operation by hand to ensure that they go through and obtain the remains that are in the location.
And that was done in this case.
Yes,
Did you transport the remains somewhere?
yes.
Where did you transport the remains to?
The Manitowoc County Coroner's Office.
Was there a point in time when they were transported to another facility for inspection?
Yes.
Where was that?
The University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, where Dr. Karsten holds his forensic laboratory.
Were you present when Dr. Karsten did his review?
Yes,
You indicated you're on the major crimes unit as well as the cold case unit, correct?
I'm part of our Wisconsin Identity Resolution team.
And have you worked with Dr. Karsten's before?
I have.
Have you worked these type of cases before where human remains are found?
Yes.
Can you describe what kind of review Dr. Karsten's does as part of a crime laboratory team?
Yes. Dr. Karsten will re-articulate the remains. Photographs will be taken. He'll conduct measurements. And then in this case, we also had radiographs conducted that he then reviewed. And then after going through the remains, observing, he'll then put together a report with his summary and opinions.
Were you present when he reviewed the remains?
Yes.
And were there any injuries or anything of significance that was brought to your attention?
Yes.
What was that?
One, there was a healed fracture of the zygomatic process of the right temporal bone, which was described to me by Dr. Karsten as being a right cheekbone. He explained that it was antemortem or prior to death, and that the healing of it would have showed that the injury would have had to have happened at least several weeks prior. He was also able to identify marks on it that indicated carnivore scavenging of the remains in the area, which was also consistent with when they were recovering the remains. They weren't in in articulated order in the wooded area as they were scattered about, believed to be from carnivore scavenging.
Were any items sent to the crime laboratory from the remains?
Yes.
And what items were sent to the crime laboratory for identification?
We had a forensic odontologist also conduct an examination who was able to extract 2 teeth, and those 2 teeth were sent to the crime laboratory for DNA testing, along with hair mat that was recovered from the scene.
And was the crime laboratory able to identify who the remains were?
Yes,
And who were the remains?
it was consistent with victim child 1.
Besides Dr. Karsten's review, were the remains also reviewed by a medical examiner?
Yes,
And who is that?
the Fond du Lac County Chief Medical Examiner, Dr. Adam Kolak.
Was he able to make any conclusions?
He conducted an overread of Dr. Carson's report and concluded in regards to the death of victim child 1 to be homicide by unspecified means. He did note that pending the results of toxicology, he would reserve the right to change or add an addendum report to his initial report.
When you actually were out at the scene where the remains were located, correct?
Yes,
And can you just, this was a wooded area, correct?
yes.
Was there anything unusual about the tree that these remains were found by? Any unusual substances?
So there were a few trees within the area, but in particular, one of the trees had an unknown or what appeared to be a foreign type of soil or gravel near the base of the tree.
Did any other trees have this gravel or items near the base?
No,
And was that in the area where the remains were located?
yes,
Have you conducted some follow-up regarding this gravel or sand that was observed?
yes.
And what type of follow-up were you able to do regarding this substance?
Law enforcement learned that witness 1 maintained buckets of sand over the winter at the apartment complex that the defendant resided at, and would utilize the Nissan to get that sand in those buckets. Items were received and the sand and other samples have been sent to a out-of-state crime lab for analysis.
Were there buckets found in the Nissan when it was searched?
Yes,
This area, Christie Bob Lane, can you describe what kind of road this is?
Chrissy Bob Lane is a gravel road in a very rural wooded area of Manitowoc County. It's approximately 1 mile total before it ends, and it starts at Manitou Drive.
Was law enforcement contacted by anyone regarding the defendant's familiarity with Christie Bob Lane?
Yes,
And was that a resident of that road?
a property owner.
And did that property owner in Christie Bob Lane indicate what the defendant's familiarity was with that road?
Yes,
And what was that?
that owner had hired the defendant to conduct a pressure wash or power washing job at this individual's residence or property that they own. And this occurred in August, September of 2023.
Did law enforcement attempt to verify the route from the defendant's apartment on Mishicot Road out to Christie Bob Lane and circling back past St. Vincent de Paul and the other areas where the video indicated the Nissan had passed.
Yes,
And was law enforcement able to travel that whole route in less than an hour?
yes,
As part of your investigation, were there also search warrants and subpoenas submitted to Google and other, Facebook, other entities to try and gain some information?
yes,
And was there a Google return regarding the defendant's information?
yes.
Was there anything of interest as far as the Google Maps from February 19th of 2024?
Yes.
And what was of interest?
In a return from Google, in a section for my activity between the 18th and the 20th, there were Google recorded information that was zoomed in off of Chrissy Bob Lane, very near where the remains were recovered.
And was that on February 19th or February 18th?
February 18th and also February 19th in the morning hours.
And you indicated it was the area of Christie Bob Lane where the remains were found?
Yes.
I have nothing further at this time. Thank you.
Attorney Jensen?
Did you review the autopsy protocol report?
I did.
And you've reviewed those before, correct?
Yes.
So you have an understanding of the phrases and the words that a medical examiner uses, correct?
Yes.
So when a medical examiner formulates an opinion that the manner of death is homicide, that means only that it was not natural causes, correct?
It means it was at the hands of somebody else.
Right. And means it was at the hands of another human being, correct?
Yes.
But this medical examiner was not able to say the means of causing death, correct? So we don't know if it was trauma, do we?
We don't.
We don't know if it was starvation, correct?
That's correct.
We don't know if it was suffocating, right?
Correct.
We don't know how this child died, do we?
Correct.
No further questions.
Attorney Wbay, any follow-up?
Nothing, Judge. Thank you.
All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes.
You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Any other witnesses, Attorney Wbay?
No, Judge.
Attorney Jensen, any witnesses?
No, we rest.
And the state need only to provide testimony that a felony was committed, or probable cause that a felony was committed and probable cause that this defendant committed it. I think there's multiple felonies that have been shown today. I think there's sufficient testimony specifically regarding hiding a corpse to show probable cause. The victim, child one, was in the care of the defendant. That child is deceased, and there is no one who had seen that child independently of the defendant since February 16th. We have the driving on February 19th, where he leaves his phone at home, has a movie playing, and is traveling in a borrowed vehicle throughout the Two Rivers area. He's looking at a map for this Christie Bob Lane, which is a remote road that he's familiar with. The remains were found in this wooded area with gravel or sand that was at the base of the tree where the child would have been placed. I think there's sufficient probable cause for that specific charge, but I also think that there is also probable cause for the physical abuse based upon the punishments that were imposed as far as the forced standing, the sleep deprivation, and other punishments that were imposed by this defendant while in his care between January and February of 2024, or at a minimum that there was neglect. I think there's multiple felonies that have been shown, and the state would ask for a bind over. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Jensen.
Well, I want to begin by reading a subsection of 970.03 concerning preliminary examinations, specifically subsection 10, which reads, in multiple count complaints, the court shall order dismissed any count for which it finds there is no probable cause. The facts arising out of any count ordered dismissed shall not be the basis for a count in any information. Now, in a case, State versus Johnson, the Court of Appeals recognized that there's some discord between that section and the section concerning informations, the filing of informations. And the way the court resolved it is the court should dismiss any count for which there is no probable cause, but that count may be included in an information if it is transactionally related. So the reason I think that's important is because under no view of this evidence, even giving the benefit of any reasonable inference to the state, is there probable cause to believe that Mr. Vang committed count 1, which is causing death by child abuse. The state was unable to present any information as to how the child died, the cause of death. That's why I clarified that the medical examiner calling or characterizing it as a homicide means only that it was not death by natural causes, that it may have been at the hands of another human being. But the medical examiner was not able to say what actually was the cause of death. And in the absence of evidence concerning the cause of death, there's no way there's probable cause to believe that Jesse Vang caused the death of that child by neglect or abuse. So there is no probable cause for count 1 under the statute. That has to be dismissed. Concerning the hiding of a corpse, again, even giving the benefit of every reasonable inference to the state, their theory is that on February 19th, I believe, was what the date was when they tracked that borrowed car to the St. Vincent store, and that they found a suitcase, and inside the suitcase was DNA belonging to the child as well as saliva. That it is not a reasonable inference to believe that the child was in that suitcase and was taken out to that location where where the body was found that day by Jesse Vang. That is a leap of faith. It's not a reasonable inference. There just simply is no reason to believe it. So I don't think there's probable cause for count 2 either. And so I think that should be dismissed. But if the court binds Mr. Vang over on count 2, hiding of a corpse, which is what the state is recommending, I don't think they even believe there's probable cause for count 1. We can argue in front of the trial judge whether this count 1 of homicide is transactionally related to the hiding of a corpse, but as for today's purposes, I think both counts should be dismissed.
Thank you, Attorney Jensen. As the parties have indicated, the purpose of a preliminary hearing is for the state to show that any felony was probably committed and that this defendant probably committed it. The state meets that burden, relatively low burden, by providing proof through testimony. In addition, at this stage, the court views the testimony in the light most favorable to the state. In this case, the court believes the state has provided sufficient testimony to meet that burden, and I will find probable cause that Mr. Vang committed a felony in Manitowoc County, Wisconsin, and I will bind him over for further proceedings. Do the parties wish to have a separate arraignment, or are you prepared to proceed today?
I'm asking for an arraignment date, Judge.
All right. Is there any day or time that works better for the parties?
My days are all different.
All right. We'll go off the record for scheduling purposes.
Judge, I'm fine if we do the arraignment by Zoom. I don't know if that would assist counsel with their schedules.
Well, it would help, but it still depends on what the date is.
How does Tuesday, November 12th look? Is that date available, Attorney Jensen?
Well, Mr. Mogan and I have a long motion hearing in Fond du Lac County starting at 9,
All right.
and then I have a plea and sentencing in the afternoon, so the short answer is no.
Okay. How about November 18th at 11?
I can do
Judge, are we able to do 11:30? I made a motion hearing starting at 10 and branch 3, and I hope to be done by then.
That should be fine. 11:30 is fine.
that. Yeah, that's
Would 11:30 work on the 18th, Attorney Jensen?
yes.
All right, let me just check to make sure that we can do it at that time. All right, we'll go back on the record. The parties have decided on the arraignment date to be November 18th at 11:30. If the parties wish to appear by Zoom, that would be permitted. I believe the jail would require 24 hours notice for an in-person hearing. We're back on the record.
I have a question about that. I wouldn't have a problem appearing by Zoom as long as Mr. Vang is not sitting here in court at an
All
empty
right.
table.
So if you want to appear by Zoom, we'll have Mr. Vang by Zoom also.
That, I would prefer that.
All right. Is there anything else needed, Attorney Jensen?
No, thank you.
Attorney Bree?
No, Judge, thank you.
All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. See you then. After the meeting. Okay?
Judge, the exhibit 1 is still by the court reporter. Do we want that in the record, or do you want me to take it?
I believe it has to go on the record, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that correct?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.